So Windows used to have a bunch of anime girl mascots. These anime girls are official Microsoft characters made by Microsoft to promote Microsoft software like Windows, for example. But the idea for these anime girl mascots did not come from Microsoft. That came from the internet. Microsoft did not start using mascots like this until Windows 7 in 2009. But some of these characters have existed online since the early 2000s, and they have a specific name. They're called OS Tans. And if you watch anime, you probably know what this means to some extent, but Tan is supposed to be a cute, childish way of saying Chan at the end of a name, and I'm not going to be doing that the entire video, so I'm calling them OS Chans from now on. And these OS Chans started popping up in the early 2000s on image boards such as 2chan and 4chan, though mostly 2chan, and most of the art of OS Chans in general portrays them as like cutesy and ditzy. That's probably because people generally imagine these operating systems, at least back in the day, as trying their best. And believe it or not, at one point in time, people used to like Windows, okay? That was a thing that people did. But the first personifications of Windows are thought to be Windows Me, which was released in 2000. And that OS Chan's name was Mi-chan because it was called Windows Me, and that makes sense. And really, the best way to describe Mi-chan is that Mi-chan is a meme. She was just a really good character to appreciate Windows at the time and also say it was bad at the same time, because it was. Like, people liked the fact that Windows existed, but it still was like really difficult to work with. And those earlier versions of Windows had a lot more charm than the current versions of Windows, as you can probably imagine. The newer ones are like corpo cramp. And on top of that, since operating systems were generally a newer thing, people were way more forgiving of problems in general. When the current version of Windows is Windows 11, and that version of Windows still has bugs from Windows 7, yeah, people are gonna be a lot less charitable to your operating system. People were also super excited about the internet in general because it was all very new, and dial-up internet was not uncommon then. And a lot of you probably don't even remember having dial-up because you probably never actually had it, so here's what it sounded like. Your modem would make that sound whenever you connected to the internet. I never personally experienced it because I am 24, but yeah, it sounds awful. And that kind of internet was not uncommon when Mi-chan was becoming popular, to put the time period into perspective. And fasting forward to 2005, this animation called Troubled Windows blew up on image boards and then made its way to YouTube and gained a lot of popularity. And when I say a lot of popularity, I'm speaking relatively to image boards, okay? It didn't like blow up or anything, but it seems like the original upload from 19 years ago is still online, which is crazy to me. But with that video's popularity and OS Chans in general, someone at Microsoft eventually saw these popping up and decided to make an official anime girl mascot for Windows. Windows 7 Ultimate DSP Edition. This copy of Windows was limited to 7,770 units, probably because, you know, Windows 7, and it was only sold in Japan. It included a special wallpaper and sound set for Nanami Batobi. And Nanami is the mascot for Windows 7, and her name basically is Windows 7, by the way, a little tidbit. They also released an official character profile that shows Nanami was born April 6, 1992, the release date of Windows 3.1, and she lives in Tokyo and has 16 extended family members. Now, besides all that about the character, the actual operating system itself is interesting. Thankfully, someone uploaded a 1-minute long video that shows all of the things that this version can do, which I'll also link down below. But yeah, you get a little Nanami on the right of your screen, kind of like Clippy. And I think the most surprising part to me about this is the fact that there was so much work put into it, and there was only 7,770 copies. That's it. There was no more after that. So it's really cool to see they went all out with designing this special edition because they didn't have to do it this well. It's extremely well done, especially since it's only a limited thing, and I feel like it's just really cool to see because I feel like if they did this today, it would be a lot worse. It'd just be an anime girl on the front cover and that's it. But this version of Windows 7 had custom everything, including a custom install disk. There was also an advertisement using Nanami to promote Windows 7, and honestly, guys, it's a really cool advertisement, and I really don't say that about ads very often. I personally like the ad because they show you how to build your own computer in the ad, and it's animated so well. And this definitely does not absolve Microsoft of their sins, of course, but it's nice to see that Microsoft used to care. It shows they actually can. There was also an anime short series of Nanami working in an Akihabara store, and if you don't know Akihabara, it's basically the weeb capital of the world. There's lots of anime themed to everything from stores to cafes, as well as tech stuff. So the location they picked for the short series makes a lot of sense. But from what I could find, there was only 3 episodes of this show, and I don't know if there's some kind of story to these or if they're one-off shorts because none of them are in English, and I honestly have no idea where these came from or where I could find the original source because there is none. So I checked the comments to see if anyone said anything helpful, and they're just as confused as me. Even the guy who uploaded the video doesn't know. I'll link them down below if you want to go look at them, but yeah, I can't find an English version, so sorry about that. And that's pretty much all of the exclusive content I could find for this version of Windows, which is kind of a lot given this version of Windows only had about 8,000 units. They really went all out with this character, and that might be because it's Windows 7. Windows 7 by far was the best version of Windows to be released up until then. Windows XP was functional but ugly, and Windows Vista was just pretty. That's it. Windows 7, in my opinion, is still better than any modern version of Windows. It really was just the peak of operating systems because it was just Windows 11 without any AI or ads or bugs or any other problem. Like, for example, all of the old control panels you can still find on Windows 11, 8, and 10 are from Windows 7. Even Microsoft seems to think it was the best version of Windows because it can't get rid of it. And I mean, in general, a lot of these problems with Windows 10 and 11 were introduced into 8, which I think is everyone's least favorite version of Windows. It's just the worst one. It was designed for tablets, and no one bought Windows tablets, so it was just bad Windows. No one liked it. And then on top of that, since it was built on top of Windows 7, all of the functionality was garbage. It was just a bad operating system. But even though Windows 8 sucks, they did make multiple DSP versions of Windows 8 with anime girl mascot. The first OS chain is named Adobe U with this cover art, and the second one is named Adobe I with this art. There were 4,000 units sold with each character, so 8,000 total. So kind of like Pokemon where there's 2 versions of each game. And they were sold with a Microsoft Wedge mouse with a Windows 8 logo on it. And I looked this mouse up, and it is probably the worst mouse I have ever seen in my life. I don't know why they would pair this mouse with this operating system. The type of person who would buy an anime girl version of Windows does not want this mouse. You know that. My guess for this is they were trying to get rid of stock because who would want this mouse? This mouse, like, objectively sucks. Look at it. But in general, the Windows 8 DSP versions had less bonus content than the Windows 7 DSP version. They had 3 theme pack wallpapers, event sounds, and some character voiceover. There was also 2 limited edition Akihabara editions with 444 units being sold each for 888 total, but that is not the end of the Windows 8 version. There was also apparently a Windows 8 Can edition from Unicom with 2,888 units being made, and this one included a notepad, t-shirt, mousepad, pocket media case, U and I badges, and a freeze blanket. But I really couldn't find anything super concrete about this at the time I was writing this script. If that changes when I'm editing, I'll let you know with like text or something. One of the most notable parts of these Windows 8 versions is that there's a Windows 8 music video titled Through the Window that was presented on the second day of the Windows Developer Days in Japan conference, which is honestly an insane thing to see at a Windows Microsoft conference. It looks like an anime intro. And these characters had their own Twitter account. And the profiles give you a really good idea of how old these accounts were because, I mean, just look at Twitter. It's so old. Pretty standard brand things to do. And overall, out of these versions of Windows 8, there is definitely a winner, and it is the Can Edition. The Can Edition just came with the most cool things like the t-shirt, notepad, mousepad, pocket media case, smartphone cleaning stand, 2-way PC cleaner, UNI badges, and a freeze blanket. That is definitely the best edition. And when it came to the Wedge mouse, I really don't know why they did that. They really should have just made some weeb mousepad with like anime girl boobs on the front. The Wedge mouse just seems like a really weird pick, which really just makes me think that Microsoft was trying to get rid of stock for this garbage mouse, because like, just look at it. It's bad. It's a bad mouse. And Microsoft definitely went all out for the advertising of Windows 8, not so much the effort department. There was a lot more versions of Windows 8, but a lot less cool things and unique things. And that's probably just because at the time, people thought of Windows 8 as being the future. And it wasn't, because it sucks. Microsoft was really trying to push 2-in-1s a lot, and also, like, you know, tablets a lot. And no one wanted either of those devices. They just didn't. And this was also around the same time as Windows Phone. Yeah, Microsoft really thought they had something here. But generally speaking, no one wanted this version of Windows. No one did. Usually people who use Windows 8 were forced to, like myself. I and many others did not want my operating system to look like this. This was stupid. No one wanted this. Why did you even do it? But thankfully, even though Windows 8 sucked, Windows 8.1 also got an OS change, and Windows 8.1 was a lot better. The Windows 8.1 Pro DSP Edition is one of the best editions we've seen so far. This version is the Adobe Family version by Windows Nav Plus and was limited to 1,000 units. This version came with the Adobe Family picture wallpaper, the Adobe character voices, a complete edition, and a complete edition Windows theme pack as far as bonuses related to characters go. It also came with this Pasogam Data Hikoshi 9 Plus license key. It seems to be some kind of data software for like STEM fields, which really narrows down the target demographic for this version of Windows, doesn't it? It also came with a 3-month free trial for Skype, which no one really wanted. It also came with the Microsoft Sculpt mobile mouse, which is an improvement over the Wedge, but it still kind of looks terrible. And unlike other versions of Windows Pro DSP, this version was available for custom PCs from multiple companies, and these versions had different things. They included 2 types of custom wallpapers and a Christmas and New Year's theme pack with system voices. Microsoft was definitely slowing down with these mascots around Windows 8.1, because even though this version of Windows is called 8.1, it was more popular than Windows 8, because it fixed all of Windows 8's problems. So the fact that Microsoft slowed down with the OS change around Windows 8.1 release is pretty telling that Microsoft felt like these were a waste of resources and time. But the Windows 10 Jan is really interesting because there's no special version of Windows 10. They just made the character and gave her a weirdly detailed backstory. So her name is Toko, meaning 10, and it was picked by by a fan poll on Facebook to kind of date this already. According to her profile, she's part of the Adobe family, so the Windows family, the same family as all the other OS chans, but Toko is 100 years from the future and likes online gaming and supporting her friends, so basically she's a mercy maid. But she's also an excellent student and loves expanding her knowledge on technology, and her manager's a bit worried she's a bit spontaneous, and she also enjoys cheering on people who are working hard and doing their best. And that made me think of her just cheering on all those salarymen in anime who look like corpses. And this might be a cultural divide thing, but this character is like obnoxiously perfect to me, and it's also weird they gave this character this much backstory when they didn't really use her in any kind of promotions at all. Like, there's some things with Toko in it, but not many, and it's kind of weird given the fact that her backstory is so detailed, and the Windows 7 character got way more attention and had a way less detailed backstory. The only thing I could find that's still up is a do-it-yourself series on YouTube on building computers, which I think is officially endorsed because they all link to each other, like it links to their official Twitter page, so I'm assuming it's official. But this is the only official content I could find with Toko in it. I'm not saying others don't exist. This is just all I could find, though, and a lot of it is like nuked. I don't know why. Microsoft did this whole thing where they nuked a bunch of stuff. We'll go over it a little bit more later, but yeah, they nuked all this stuff. And there was also an introduction video of Toko, which is removed, and I can't find a re-upload anywhere. Like, it might be out there somewhere, but I am doubtful because I can't find it, and all the videos related to these characters are pretty under the radar. But Toko did get a fair share of unofficial content made. There's a custom Toko Windows 10 theme you can get, and there's also a custom Osu level based off of Toko. And that is probably the least surprising thing about this character, honestly. Osu and anime girls, that's like the two things that go together the most. But after Windows 10 release, Microsoft basically killed off these mascots. The company that was making them got switched up to a VPN, so there is no official OS chan for Windows 11, but there is a fan-made one. Her name is Ichika Madobi, and her name basically means Windows 11. Microsoft has never officially made this character canon, as we just discussed, but Microsoft did mention this character in an Instagram reel, so they at least acknowledge the character exists officially, because it's on their official account. But the timeline of these characters in general is honestly pretty weird. They released the Windows 7 OS chan at a really good time, and if Microsoft just kept leaning into it, I think it would have done really well. I didn't hear about this at all. I think part of Microsoft was like ashamed of the mascot because really, they didn't push it that hard at all. But it is hard to gauge how well these characters did in Japan and other countries because there really isn't many views on all of these videos. But it's also all in Japanese with no translation, so it's pretty hard to gauge how popular it is in Japan. Because even me trying to find stuff on YouTube for these characters is pretty America-centric, because remember, the OS chan started off on 2chan, a Japanese image board. So to accurately find these characters and find out how popular they were, I'd have to speak Japanese, which I can't do. But I think it's fair to say, among the terminally online, these will remain very popular for a very long time, because they were created by the terminally online. And the relatively short list of OS chans we just went over is really just the timeline of them going from unofficial to official. If you dig a little deeper, the whole list of OS chans expands quite a bit. There is pretty much an OS chan for every operating system ever. And starting at Windows 1.0, we have Windows 1.0 chan. Yeah, the names weren't really there yet, but yeah, this OS chan was depicted as slow and innocent to personify Windows 1.0. And this character really is just like lobotomized. That's kind of their whole personality. That's really it. And next we have Windows 2.0 chan, who personifies Windows change to graphical interfaces, because Windows 1.0 definitely was not that usable. Maybe someone who actually used it would disagree with me, but as someone born in 2000, Windows 1.0 looks like alien technology to me, and Windows 2.0 is not much better, but at least I vaguely understand the layout of this operating system, unlike Windows 1.0. And Windows 2.0 chan is the daughter of Windows 1.0 chan, and she's supposed to be smart and extremely skilled, unlike her mother, Windows 1.0. And next we have Windows 3.1 OS chan, and canonically she was close to Windows 1.0 and 2.0 in childhood, but doesn't remember much, and for some reason they're never allowed to speak. And when I say for some reason, by the way, it's like literally just some reason. They don't actually say. A possible interpretation is that her memory was wiped, or Windows 1.0 and 2.0 chan were exiled. Really, the most notable part of Windows 3.1 chan is that she also has a counterpart called Windows 3.2 chan, who is the same but speaks simplified Chinese, which I think is kind of funny. And next we have NT Mama, who is a depiction of Windows NT 3.x. And as the name implies, she's supposed to be a motherly figure. And that makes sense given the operating system. Looking back at previous versions of Windows, it's pretty obvious Windows NT is where they generally wanted to head with Windows, and Windows NT at the time would have been much better than any of the previous operating systems, so a motherly depiction for this character makes sense. And next we have 95 chan, which is definitely reflective of the rise of weebs in the late 90s and early 2000s. 95 chan is the depiction of Windows 95, and is a traditional lady from early modern Japan. The reason 95 chan is like this is because Windows 95 is generally considered a massive improvement over Windows NT, but it still respects the roots of the previous operating system, hence the traditional Japanese woman thing. She is also unfamiliar with USB devices and the internet, which makes sense because at the time, dial-up was really your only option and a lot of people didn't have it, and also floppy disks were still in use at the time. Windows 95 actually got USB support later in its life, and it was generally considered hit or miss if your USB device would work or not. That is why 95 chan is scared of them. She doesn't know what they are. But there's also 95 OSR 2.1 chan, which is a mouthful, and she's super niche lore-wise, and she's just an inventor. That's like pretty much it. And an even more niche version of Windows 95 chan is just just a Western 95 Chan. And honestly, these two editions are just kind of schizophrenic. There's like no info on them, and they're just there. There's like, that's it. And the next mascot is just a dog girl named Inuti. And she is just a dog girl. That's it. It's not even for a specific operating system. It's just an extension of the family of Windows NST, and they have no specific traits besides being a dog girl. That's it. That's it. That's just his character. And next we have Windows 97 and 98 SE. These characters are also lesser known and have less detail, but Windows 97 is a traditional Chinese girl, and Windows 98 and 98 SE are schoolgirls. And guys, I know the neckbeard stereotype was a stereotype, but all I'm saying is it didn't appear out of thin air, okay? And next we have the server chans, which I'm covering all at the same time, even though it's not really in order, because within this universe of OS chans, they are definitely side characters. First, we have the 2003 server, and she is half girl, half fish for some reason, and the bonnet on her head is an Ethernet hub, because servers have big Ethernet hubs. And besides that, there is not much of this character. It's just a personified server, so people could make memes about the stuff they like. But after someone made Windows 2003 Chan, people went back and made a Windows 2000 Chan, and then later made a Windows 2008 Chan. The blonde one is 2008, and the blue hair one is 2000, and the pink hair one is 2003. And next we have Windows XP. And Windows XP Chan was depicted as a lewd character, because Windows XP was considered to be garbage bloatware at the time that looked pretty. And I actually did not know XP had this reputation of being trash when it first released, because everyone who talks about XP now just says it's better than Vista. That's pretty much it. But my assumption was wrong. It was bad when it launched, and they fixed it over time. One of the reasons why the perception was bad at launch and then changed over time was because hardware got better, because Windows XP was a pretty demanding operating system, so having better hardware helped a lot. And then the thing that changed Windows XP reputation the most was Windows Vista releasing, because it was so much worse. I have personally used Windows Vista, and it's a bad operating system. It just is. My experience is laggy and choppy and just bad. But for some reason, some people like Windows Vista. I don't know why. I hated it, and a lot of people I know hated it, but some people did. And the fact that Windows Vista has multiple OS chans is pretty self-evident that it was controversial at the very least. But the first two depictions are Visobu and Vistake, which I hope I'm not pronouncing wrong, but I'm making no guarantees. Visobu is a young ninja girl, and Vistake is an older girl who wears a sailor fuku. They're not related from what I can tell, and they don't have any widely agreed upon lore. It's really just these designs that people would post. There's also this lewd version named Chibi-stan, and yeah, this is what replaced XP's like lewd reputation, this character. And there's also a bunch of other minor versions of Windows Vista, but none of them were posted that frequently. And the reason Vista's identity is so split to people is probably just because if you had a better PC, it ran much better. It still wasn't great, okay? And in defense to Microsoft, they still haven't learned from this, okay? They're still doing the same thing. But circling back to the OS Chan, first up we have Windows CE. And Windows CE Chan is based off Windows Embedded Compact, which is an operating system for what looked like a BlackBerry before the BlackBerry really existed. I had no idea this device existed, and honestly, it's really cool it did, because I did not expect this to exist in 1996. This device was way ahead of its time. And taking inspiration from the device, Windows CE Chan is a fairy with a USB cable wand. So like a fairy represents portability, and the cable is a charger, I am guessing. But there really isn't much art of this character, probably because this device was so niche. And for our next character, they're based off an unreleased version of Windows called Neptune. And if Microsoft did release this version of Windows, the Windows that released in 2000 would have been called the Home Edition instead of Windows Me, because Windows Me is what they ended up releasing. And if the Windows Home Edition of 2000 came out instead of Windows Me, the internet might look drastically different. From what I can tell, Mi-chan shaped a good part of the internet, and I have no proof this character has done this, but this character seems like it's a lot of inspiration for a lot of internet culture in general. This is speculation based off things I've seen online. You might be able to cooperate or disagree, but yeah, that's my take with it. So I think if you swap Neptune for Windows Mi-chan, the internet would look a lot different, especially since the OS X Wikipedia page is based off of Mi-chan. I imagine if Mi-chan looked different, it would have a huge butterfly effect. But next we have an OS Chan that isn't really an OS Chan. Their name is Silverlight Chan, and you're not gonna guess this. They're a personification of Microsoft Silverlight. I know, really different name. And Microsoft Silverlight is some developer thing. I'm honestly not sure what it is. Developers definitely know, and they're definitely pissed at me. But Silverlight Chan was created with the explicit purpose of being an ad for Silverlight. And that also means we got an unhinged amount of detail about this character. First, she started being put in promotions in Taiwan, and her popularity spread to other countries. Her blood type is B. She's a Libra. She also likes singing, dancing, and music in general, and she hates spicy food. She also has 3 sisters who all have the same amount of insane detail. And honestly, the weirdest part of this character to me at first was seeing the blood type, because I just felt like that was really strange. I felt like there was something I needed to know. But it turns out in a lot of cultures, your blood type correlates to your star sign instead of your birth month. So that's why it's listed here, and for a lot of characters and VTubers in general, which makes a lot more sense than people considering it a must-know fact about themselves. And for our next OS Chan, we have Claudia Madobi. We talked about her a little bit earlier, and she's based off Windows Azure, which is a cloud computing platform used to build applications and services and deploy them around the world. She is also an official Microsoft character, so she has been in a lot of different commercials and advertising in general. She also had an official Microsoft webcomic, but for some reason, Microsoft pulled pulled it down. I don't know why. I do know Navi Plus that was doing these mascots got shut down though and replaced by a VPN company, but that's pretty much it. So at least you know it existed at one point, I guess. But that has been pretty much all of the Windows OS change. Like and subscribe if you're new, follow me on Blue Sky down below, and click the guys down, check out more of my content, and have a good one.